Right. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So, Jadwiga, are you in the gallery in Gdańsk?
So I present myself in virtual part, but of course, if you see me, you can feel like I am there. So
this is the world we live in now, unfortunately.
So we start or yet? Because it's
yes, we're starting. We're live. So welcome.
Welcome on the meeting or discussion. Will be part of Victorii Vesna presentation in Gdańsk, her beautiful project Noise Aquarium. I promise say a bit about our cooperation because first time I met Victoria when she came to Gdańsk with lecture. It was in 2008. It was time when she saw one of Polish Gdańsk church when she very want to present the Blue Mall. And it happened 2 years later because in 2011 we start with our series Art and Science meeting, and in 2011 was our first edition, and part of this exhibiting program was Victoria's Vesna presentation Blue Mall. And after 8 years we again present her next project. Now we are under the water and we are talking about ecology and about this, what's going on in the oceans and what people are doing with water. So about this we speak all our speakers because I am proud to host here virtual space all of you as part of ŁAԲDNIA project. And thank you very much, Victoria, for agreement to organize the meeting with us and treat it as part of ŁABDNIA project. I'd like to add that this meeting also is part of our Studio Dobra project. And after a few words, I would like to leave my voice to Anna Nacher. Thank you also to her for agreement to be leader of the discussion. And Agnieszka Kulazińska, who is head of curatorial team at ŁABDNIA, because she was responsible for cooperation with Victoria around this project. It's shortly what can I say, and maybe please Agnieszka present some details about exhibition, and after Agnieszka, Mrs. Anna Nacher will tell something more about discussion and continue this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, it is a great pleasure and an honor to participate in this project. Ever since I saw Victoria's Blue Morph, I'm her great fan, actually. So Victoria's art is one of the things that really inspired me, both as a researcher and as a creative person, because I wear at least two hats. I work as an associate professor at Institute of Audiovisual Arts at the Jagiellonian University, where I teach mostly about new media art, sometimes about sound art. Electronic literature is also one of my fields of interest. And I'm also a sound artist working primarily with voice and also with field recordings. So I think this is my headway into the project, and I think we'll tell more about it in a minute. I would like Victoria to start discussing her project.
So very briefly, because we're really here to discuss all the different issues that all of us in this room consider urgent. And just to give you a sense, first of all, Blue Morph in Gdańsk, oh my God, it was just like an amazing dream come true. My partner, James Jędrzejewski, his father was Polish. And so there was this big connection to Gdańsk and to the area. And then we saw the Church of St. John the Divine that was completely just in ruins. And 2 years later, we came and did this project that just, it was so amazing. And the staff and the team of ŁAԲDNIA is incredible. So Agnieszka, in this case, worked with me very closely, and it was very weird, actually, doing this remotely. The strangest moment was actually when everybody was outside for the opening and they were holding the laptop with me and walking around, and I was going, hi. So it's a very strange time that way, but I also felt that we couldn't make the message to enough people because it's local. And we just basically started thinking about how to extend the conversation about underwater pollution. So just very briefly to mention how this project started, it was actually started with animations that were already in place by Martina Fröschl, who joined us today. And these animations were commissioned by Terence Malick, who's a famous filmmaker, and Alfred Bendel, who's the director of the Scientific Visualization Center at the Angewandte, already worked with Terence Malick and did many incredible visualizations. He got an Emmy. So he started as a chemist and then became really kind of an art science mix in a very, very good way. And actually Blue Morph got us together because Jim and I did visualizations of the Blue Morph and also figured out ways to track, excuse me, to track the metamorphosis of a chrysalis into a butterfly. So that was the connecting thread of Alfred, who was already doing interesting work with the scanning tunneling and electron microscopy. And we started just being friends. And after a while, he ended up with these amazing planktons that the biologist Tomasz Schwacha, etc., did incredible scanning on that I never saw in my life before it was even possible. And Martina did these amazing animations. And so thinking through just how important it is to bring to the attention these bottom of the chain planktons, and also asking a question that, you know, an artist would ask, like, ooh, what does it do with noise pollution to these creatures? We know what it does to whales and dolphins, but what does it do to others? And so long story short, this has been going on now. As we met in 2016, started talking about it. For the last 3 years, we had many iterations, many ways of presenting it. And of course, this time is very much responsive to COVID time, where obviously everything was done remotely, nothing is interactive. We had actually full-on blown out versions with VR, etc. So it's a show with a linear video and then prints with AR. A relatively traditional presentation, good sound system, looks beautiful. 5 people at a time can enter. And all of this led me to think of other ways to present this. So I asked Agnieszka to introduce me to someone who works with sound in Poland. And she introduced me to Anna, which was great. I mean, a lot of us cross paths in different ways, conferences, Ars Electronica, and we kind of know of each other's work, but we're all so busy. So I dug deeper and I thought, oh my God, this person is amazing. And yes, we instantly connected. And John Brumley, who's in the background here, and Ivana worked with us, and we created a short but beautiful animation, not animation, meditation, I should say, that I'd like to show you just 2-3 minutes of it. And then we can all dive in and discuss the really important and urgent issues of noise pollution, underwater noise, ecology, in general, noise that's also media, not just ecological. So let's take a look quickly at the meditation, the video, and then we could dive into it.
Powiem też po polsku. Bardzo się cieszę, że mam niezwykłą przyjemność oddychać wspólnie z Wiktorią w Los Angeles i z całym zespołem oraz z planktonem w oceanie. Som veľmi šťastná, že môžem sa nadýchnuť s Viktoriou a tímom a s planktonom v oceáne, samozrejme.
And also shout out to Martina Fröschl and Glenn Bristol at the Vienna Sound Festival. They're also part of our team. All the beautiful animations you're seeing Martina created in the scientific art science visualization lab at the Angewandte. And I had the pleasure to work with Alfred Wendel and Martina for quite a few years, bringing to the attention these amazing little creatures. So let's dive in. Take a little time, about 15 minutes is all we're asking for you to breathe with us. Let's dive in. Breathe as if it's your last breath. Take a deep breath. Breathe in as if you're so thirsty and you're breathing in life. Life that is brought to you by the planktons. Breathe in the plankton. Out the virus. Breathe with me. Stay in rhythm, and every second breath is made by the plankton. Count one breath, second breath is the plankton. Let's dive in.
Okay.
So here's the funny moment of me participating from a distance at your opening.
Yes,
in
so
London.
maybe so maybe before we start the discussion, I can show you a little bit how the exhibition looked like, because I don't know if many people had the option to see the exhibition because of coronavirus. So that's the opening, and that was a really weird opening because we couldn't meet with the artists when we were working on the exhibition, and also during the opening, where Victoria worked with us virtually, so also during the opening. And the exhibition consists of two parts. First, as Victoria said, is AR prints, and the viewer can use them because it's interactive, downloading a special app. And then using their smartphone, the viewers can just make the images live, and the images present 7 microorganisms that create plankton. And then each image is with a description of the plankton, so people also can learn more about what this microorganism is, like a basic information. And the second part of the exhibition is the video, and the video is projected on the wall, and it's covered almost the whole wall. And the video wanted to change the scale so the microorganisms that usually are not visible, or we can see them using microscope, are huge, and viewers are a little bit smaller. So I think with the exhibition, we managed to create an impression of the entering or inviting viewer to an underwater world, and allow them to meet with 7 amazing microorganisms, and raise awareness about them, and also try to just make them aware how important they are also for our existence, and maybe, or hopefully, just make the viewer feel more responsible for those for what we are doing, and for those also little creatures that are very, very beautiful. So thank you.
And what about the sound, Agnieszka? Did you have a good loud speaker system that we discussed?
Yes, because the sound is like a very important part of the exhibition, because because I think that we managed to create in the exhibition space like a kind of immersive experience, so the people actually feel that they are entering the underwater world, and just meeting those beautiful animals, and also just starting to being aware of the threat to those invisible world, and what is the experience, what the viewer experience entering the gallery space. It's the viewer can see and hear what is usually not visible or not hearable for people.
Yes, great. So then you introduced me to Anna, which was amazing. And I never actually got to ask you, Anna, how you got interested in underwater sound, because I actually knew more about your other work, and then I discovered that you were doing this for a long time, which is pretty cool. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, it is a quite long story, actually, because the project started in 1999. Can you believe it? I can't. I mean, for me, it's like ages ago. So at the time, we were invited by, and now the very long name is coming. So we were approached by agreement on the conservation of small cetaceans of the Baltic, Northeast Atlantic, Irish, and North Seas, which is abbreviated as ASCOBANS, of United Nations Environmental Program. So it was quite a serious thing, but basically the idea was to record some music with seals' voices that would support then the project that was carried out then by the Marine Station of Gdańsku University in Hell. We were invited to Hell, and then we had a chance to work with seals themselves. So I recorded their voices, the seals' vocalization. And the funny thing is that this work was also supported by the Polish Ministry of environmental protection at the time. So as soon as they heard the first results, I mean, our music with the seals voices, the feedback was, yeah, the music is fine, but those seals voices, these are awful. Cut it out. So we had to negotiate, because having some music that's supposed to support the program of seals protection without the seals voices is actually, I think, the most awkward idea I've ever had. So that's how it started. And then 2 other albums were recorded, one with the sound environment in hell and the vicinity, including radio stations for fishermen, this information that comes through about the weather forecast for the Baltic Sea, with the sounds that you can normally hear in the streets of this small town. And we also included some, I think, whales voices as well. Whales, actually, these were orcas, whales, porpoises, and other marine mammals. And getting this recording was quite a task then, at the time. It wasn't so easy to get it, and we were promised that we would get the recordings from, I think, military, because they had hydrophone at their disposal then, and it was one of the not so many hydrophones in Poland at the time. So so we got, I think, like 15 hours of the recordings, which turned out to be some kind of a strange noises. My guess was that actually it was, I think, dolphins playing with the mic, playing with the hydrophone itself. So and this adventure lasted for like 5 years, as far as I remember. So the last album was published in 2004, and then I continued this interest with underwater, actually with water sound, because I recorded an album with the field recordings with water, mostly streams and flowing water, actually water in many forms from above the Arctic Circle, from Swedish Lapland. So I have very strong connection to water, actually. So
it's so funny when you say how they thought the seal sounds didn't sound so good. We had the very first show we had, you remember, Martina, was in Singapore, and they put it, they had it as large as, I was telling them, make the planktons as large as whales, which was amazing, but no sound. And they were saying, no, the sound is really upsetting. It's like totally destroyed the whole point of it, so you're actually looking at the beautiful animations, but okay, but the whole point is that these creatures are endangered, we are endangered. So it's an interesting kind of balance, because to this day, if you're in a group exhibition, they'll say, oh, the noise was terrible. So anyway.
Yeah. So to me, seals' voices sound beautiful. So what makes me?
Of course, amazing. It's language.
Yeah, and they're very deep. Yeah, so that's how it started. And so when I heard about this invitation, I didn't hesitate even a second. I was actually like, wow, this is really happening. Am I going to participate in Noise Aquarium online meditation? That was, wow, one of the most beautiful moments of the difficult year.
For both of us.
Probably my lifetime. So I really treasure the opportunity to collaborate with you on this online event. And from the very moment when I heard the music, the background you prepared, it became like immediate connection. So I connected immediately with the background, and it sort of, made me use my voice quite intuitively. And it was like basically very obvious thing from the very beginning. So as you know, we didn't have much time. We met for a brief session, where I had to also learn some technical tricks. But I think we just got together like we've known each other whole life. So that was it.
It's true. We'll keep going. We'll keep going. It was just so spontaneous and such a great improvisation with also John and Clinton and Ivana. It just clicked, and it really was something that was so natural. I'm very excited to continue working. And yeah, so we should also hear from Martina, right?
Exactly.
About these gorgeous
visualizations are amazing. So this was also something that really clicked, so to speak. So Martina, could you please tell us a bit more about the visualizations that you prepared for this project?
Yes, I have to unmute myself. Okay, I see. Yeah, hello, thank you for the nice words about the visualizations. I also enjoyed last week at the Audio Video Visual Festival the meditation. So we streamed it live at the festival, and it was super nice that you did this. Yeah, so the scans of the plankton were incorporated in my animations. So the Thomas Schwaha and Stefan Hanschel, the biologists in the team, scanned the animals for me, and I did the animations with this. And that is why we now can see these nice animations that were also used in the meditation. For instance, in the beginning, I mean, the beginning is the ocean, right? It's capture from the virtual reality experience of Noise Aquarium that we sadly couldn't send to Poland. It was originally planned, but due to the COVID, we couldn't send the virtual reality experience. So the ocean in the beginning of the meditation is capture only in the video. And then we had a dive through the amoeba. This is something you can only do with the computer animation. And we are very happy that we can do this. So we have also a scan of the amoeba, and you can really go with the camera through the animal. This is really nice, and I'm happy that you included it into the meditation cut. Yeah, and maybe I just mentioned briefly the animals that we have in our backdrop. So the backdrop is the postcard, and it's also it also works as an augmented reality tracker. So we have all the 7 creatures, all the 7 planktons in this picture. The cyanobacteria are very small, but they are hinted somewhere in the light, and there are several of them. So we have the Domopteris and the Noctiluca, the Actinotrocha, the Eucoplora, and the amoeba, all the animals that you can experience in the Noise Aquarium. Yeah, the animations that we did maybe were also a big part of what is special about our workflows, because we get also references from the biologists, and we use these references for the animations. These scans are a lot of biologists work with scans, so this is nothing special in biology. So they often do like imaging, but you usually have the static data, and they have some cross sections and so on. But what we did, we also incorporated motion data, more or less locomotion data or references. This depends on the animal for the project. Yeah. So this was a brief overview of my work on this project, I think.
Visualizations are really gorgeous. And I'm glad we have Sławomir here, Sławomir Kwaśniewski, whose research is actually into plankton. And Sławomir, you also had the opportunity to see the exhibition, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are, and comments about it from the perspective of someone who actually researches plankton on a regular basis.
Hello, thank you. First of all, I would like to congratulate Victoria and the entire team for really bringing the attention of everybody to plankton. It has been mentioned several times, and I think I realized after this half an hour of our discussion that, well, the exhibition is about plankton and noise, but we've been discussing only seals, whales, and the plankton is somewhere in the background, whereas it's really the basis of life on Earth. All marine plankton is what created or where life on Earth started. So I would like Victoria to continue this this performance and develop it more to tell people more about plankton, the role of plankton in this artistic way. As regards your question, yes, I went to the exhibition and I think it's really nice, well organized. I talked for a while with people curating it, and there are, in spite of COVID limitations, there are some visitors coming. Everybody's interested. It's obvious how little known plankton is among people. So it's very important act what you've done. It's very nice animation of these animals. One can really see how they look, how they move. I've been missing animations or pictures of probably the most important animals in plankton, which are copypods. But I can imagine they are maybe more difficult to do good scans and then do some animation. So, but I hope it will be done in the future. But apart from this, it's really a great piece of art, and also the one which not only brings us impressions, but also teaches us something about the world we are living. So once again, congratulations, and thank you for inviting me to join this conversation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is actually a wonderful opportunity because we have another scientist too, Friedlaender, who is an ecologist specializing in marine mammals, and Sławomir already mentioned whales. And my impression is that we're discussing kind of a different scales. Like we start from the very base of the food chain in the marine environment. So now we're moved to this upper level with some research on whales, and I would like you, Ari, to tell us a bit about how actually share something about your in connection with your work with Yolande Harris, with your art project, your common art project as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you guys having me. I think one of the things that my colleague just mentioned about plankton being the basis of the food web and the thing that helps to support all life is really valuable, because to me, one of the things that makes studying whales so interesting is that as these very large animals in the ocean, they require enormous amounts of plankton and productivity. And to me, the presence of whales in the ocean and the places where they feed is a good demonstration of where oceans work. And so the presence of a whale to me reflects a functioning ocean and primary production, and where all of this plankton has aggregated. And so there's a very tight connection between the biggest animals and the smallest animals in the ocean. And I think we can use that connection to help bring people closer to what makes oceans important, how they work, and the value of preserving them. the research that I do is to try and understand how whales behave in the ocean, how they communicate with one another, how they find their food, and how they're impacted by human activity. And one of the ways that we do that is by putting small tags on the backs of these animals that measure what they do underwater. One of the things that that the tags feature is a small video camera, so that we can see from the whale's perspective what the environment is like where they are and how they navigate that environment, how they interact with other animals in their environment. And then we also record sound on a hydrophone that's in the tag, so that we can also hear the ambient noises of the ocean, the sounds that are created naturally, the sounds that the animals then make to communicate with one another. And by visualizing it and seeing it from the animal's perspective, it gives us a little better insight into the lives of these animals. What to me is also really interesting is how you can then take this kind of information and make it presented to other types of people to engage them either emotionally and connect them to the ocean and to the animals. And Yolande was wonderful and reached out to me because of her interest in using these kinds of sounds. And I am always really curious about ways of providing information to people so that we can utilize the resources that we have to reach a broader audience and make these connections about why it's important to protect the oceans, either because someone is interested in a whale, someone sees the beauty in a picture of plankton, or they're somehow moved by the sounds that these animals create. So I can let Yolande jump in and sort of talk about how we developed this collaboration. But for me, it's just a fantastic opportunity to utilize what we do as scientists to help promote conservation and awareness and empathy of the oceans to a different community. And also, selfishly, it's a good way for me to better understand how people who are non-scientists may empathize with the ocean and the things that connect them and draw them into this emotionally, so that I can do my science in a way that will engage more people.
Thank you very much. Actually, this is the topic that will probably we get back to it today as well. But no, indeed, I would like to pass the voice to Yolande, a researcher and an artist. And I'm wondering, Yolande, because you worked with actually expanding the human imagination beyond our sensual experiences. So I'm interested in how you actually see your work from this point of view. Can we as human somehow empathize with the animals, with the underwater environments in terms of sensorial experiences?
Yeah, thanks, Anna. And it seems to me that we need some way to understand and connect to an environment that we can't access or can't physically be in. You know, we are humans with our sensorium, extended by our technologies. And the ocean has so much ability for us to connect to it if we can somehow engage in different scales. That's a crucial one. And I love the way Victoria's working with plankton, and the scale of her exhibition is dealing with like completely altering, flipping the scale of our relationship to the scale of the plankton. And then, you know, working with such enormous mammals as whales, one of the ways we kind of engage with them in any level is the enormity of these creatures. So we have these two totally different scales. And one of the ways I like to think of it is, you know, how do we understand something like underwater sound when most of the sound that's happening is actually outside of our human hearing range? So that again, there's a kind of scaling in, like a folding in of these different scales of very high sounds, very low frequency sounds that we have to bring into our sensorium in order to even have some kind of physiological or psychological connection to or experience of these sounds and of these places. So given that, that's the kind of area that I like to work with. And so to find that Ari was working with these tags that literally places the eye of the camera and the ear of the microphone, you know, our little technological extensions of ourselves on their back. It's not as if we can in any way sense what they're sensing. It's not an equivalent. We don't see what the whale sees or experience their world, but we have a little window into it that is totally different than what we had before. So that was just my reason for reaching out to Ari, and to actually witness the images from these tags was just extraordinary. And I wanted to share that with other people, which led to an exhibition, the first, I hope, of a number of different ones, at least using the video and the sound in a multi-screen, large-scale environment where you can stand within it and listen to the sounds and watch a pod of orcas and hear their vocalization between each other, moving at high speed, coming so close to each other that their fins touch, you know, moving out of the ocean, out of the surface and up into our airspace. You know, we suddenly see a distance and then diving back down again. These things, they kind of change our relation to these animals and put us underwater, much like Victoria's meditation does. You know, we go down and under. There's something about being under and then, you know, coming up with these whales to take this breath and then returning down again. That's really, you know, it has this kind of physiological connection. And so those are the kind of experiences that I'm trying to provoke in people in order to give presence in some way to the ocean. And by giving presence to that, I hope that when you give something presence, you can't ignore it so easily. So the idea is that sense of presence is important.
Thank you very much. I remember that when we met to discuss this topic and to prepare for this panel discussion, Robertina said something really eloquent that what is experienced cannot be ignored. So I think this is precisely what Yolande told us, both with her art project and here in this comment. And before I pass the voice to Robertina, I would like to mention Zygmunt Klusek, who is not from us here today, but he contributed to this discussion before when we met earlier. And Zygmunt Klusek is actually a specialist in underwater acoustics. He uses acoustic methods to research marine wildlife. And I think one of the things he said was actually that we can open up the research and our imagination when using acoustics as a method to work to carry out the research on marine ecology, and that was pretty mind-opening. But unfortunately, Zygmunt is not here with us today. So I would like to invite Robertina to share her comments about her project that I think this year was on a display in Linz, right? About one of your gardens, the Adriatic Garden. That was the title, as far as I remember.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for inviting me. Anyway, I'm very pleased to contribute to this kind of beautiful round table, even if it's more square than round, because we are in this squared world. But Yeah, I work by myself also as an artist who is working a lot in art, science, technology, and I mix all of it together many times. And one of my main thoughts inside of my art is mostly like dealing with ecological changes and challenges which we are all facing now in our planet. And with Adriatic Garden is a project which I co-developed together with Gino Šutić from Dubrovnik. It was the team from Art asked us this year to do something in online and / also to be able to connect it with the local environments. And as I'm coming from Slovenia, where Adriatic Sea is also placed, and Gino is from Dubrovnik, we proposed that. And it was continuation of our ongoing research, which is called Aqua Forensic. It's an art piece where we are working on research on understanding how the pharmaceuticals, which we are using on daily basis, are going into sewage waters, and how quickly and in which kind of quantities is this kind of reaching the oceans and seas, and it's also life. It's one of the things. But with Victoria Vesna, we know each other also now since years, and I think we are this kind of aquatic nerds together many times. As we met when Victoria was working with octopus, and I was working a lot with jellyfish, which is like one of the biggest planktons. It can be big, but it can be also really tiny. So it's the one which is like actually, if I think about our round table, is the one who is like going between these different sizes. And then with my project Aquatocene, which is like really sound art project, I'm also working on this understanding of what does it mean, the aquatic bioacoustics, what we can hear, like how to understand the aquatic atmospheres in the sound wise also, and what is the meaning of huge human presence in the mostly through technological devices in oceans and seas, where we are doing much of it is the presence of the noise. And one of the things which I kind of came through in my research in the recent years is the thing that the underwater noise pollution is one of the pollutants which we could get rid of it quite fast, we as users of it and humans in general, which we are using the oceans and seas also for the transport, for stuff like that, because, you know, with just better use of the technological devices, different use of it, and also slower travel, when I speak about boats and this, could be influencing that kind of sound levels which they're present much differently.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Actually, I read about the noise pollution recently, and I was really terrified when I read that much of noise now comes from fracking, underwater fracking, and when there is this air blasted, it can produce, you know, the noise at the level of 200 decibels, which is comparable to rocket launch. And it happens every 15 seconds when the fracking is going on. So this is absolutely unbelievable. And so I think we will continue the discussion on noise pollution, but I would like to pass 2 questions that we got from the audience watching us on YouTube. Christoph is asking 2 interested questions. One concerns the plankton as such. Christoph asks whether it is possible to distinguish between organisms of the same species in plankton and identify individual characteristics. I think it might be a question for Sławomir, who specializes in plankton. Did you tackle this?
Well, of course, we have to learn how to distinguish between different organisms which we identify as species. So yes, it's possible, but it's tedious. It needs a microscope, and it needs bringing these organisms under the microscope. However, today there are modern techniques using DNA sequencing. So very ambitious goals aim at possibility to identify composition, species composition, by examining samples of water which contain a DNA which comes from individual organisms. But traditionally, yes, we learn how to distinguish this different plankton. Sometimes it's easy because they look different. Sometimes it's very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. And thank you, Christopher, for asking questions. There is another one, and actually it's quite interesting because Christopher asked whether you intend the viewers to identify themselves with individual organisms in plankton as comparable to some animals in classic documentaries. And of course, Victoria would like to answer us first. Go ahead.
I think it's a good question to talk a little bit about how the interaction happens, and that was moved into the meditation as well. So when you mentioned an amazing kind of noise, initially when I was working with Paul Geluso, who was helping with the immersive sound, I was thinking of having the sound all the time. And we actually calculated that we in the room, in the recording studio, could not handle it for more than 15 seconds at a time. So it really made me feel such an urgency. And speaking of, do you identify with the plankton? No, we're actually trying to get away from that anthropocentric view, but we want to bring in the wonder of the complexity of these creatures. So there's 7 that I received to work with from Alfred and Martina, but it really is hundreds of thousands of species that are there, and to just see up close. So the idea is, if you balance yourself on the balancing board, which by the way was repurposed from Blue Morph, funnily enough, you when you're quiet and you're centered, the plankton, one of them, comes to you, and you have a moment where you can actually observe and commune with the plankton. And that moment is when the noise stops and you hear from a distance the whale song. So you're actually getting in touch with the plankton and then receiving kind of a response from the whale song. So the long answer is no, you don't identify with it, but you commune with it, and it assumes an importance that normally is not there because it's not visible.
Thank you so much. Not visible. And it probably means that most of the people actually doesn't even realize how much we owe to plankton. The very fact that we can breathe actually is related to plankton, which Victoria mentioned also in her project, or discussing her project several times. But noise pollution was also mentioned in this discussion several times already. So I would like to continue this topic for a while. And I would like to ask, and this is a question to all of you, so please raise your hands if you want to tackle this question. So my question would be, do you think well, I'm wondering to what extent the general public, the general audience, is aware of the problem. In your opinion, how you as scientists and artists can tackle this issue? How can you prompt some solutions, or how can you make people more aware of how serious the situation really is with noise pollution these days? Ari, go ahead.
Yeah, so noise pollution for marine mammals is one of the things we've been studying for about the past 15 years. And one of the benefits of studying marine mammals, because they're very public animals and because people empathize with them very closely, is There have been cases where military sonar and sounds from seismic exploration has caused stranding events from animals, from marine mammals, in a very visible way. And one of the ways that we are now studying that is by the tags that Yolande mentioned that we put on these animals that measure sound. We actually are working with industries like seismic, like the Navy, and we do experiments where we put a tag onto an animal and we play a sonar at a level of sound that we can control, and we can see what level of sound the animal receives. And then the tag will tell us how the animal changes its behavior in relation to that sound. So we've learned quite a bit about how animals respond to these sounds in a very direct way. But one of the other issues with sound pollution in a chronic way is that as you increase the background noise, if you think about being at a party, you have to expend more energy to communicate with somebody that's close by to you. And it also limits your ability to communicate with someone that's far away from you. So there are a lot of opportunities for social connections between animals to become strained when there's greater noise pollution. And as Yolande mentioned with the orcas, their vocal communication is very important to them. And so noise pollution can have chronic impacts over the lifetime of animals, or it can have very direct impacts when it occurs in a directed way. And we're trying to understand each of those, but they're both different and they're both very important to understand.
Thank you very much. Robertina, you would like to add something, I see.
Yeah, I'm very pleased that Ari just mentioned this Lombardo effect where everything just starts to overyell each other. And I just wanted to comment that when I do my compositions, and especially when I do performances, I try to balance out the beauty of the aquatic environments, because, you know, it's nice to give the audience this impression that they can enjoy it, and then also to give them the experience of real-time changes which they're happening these days now there. So it's also, I go very low, very to the levels that it feels very, that it brings the anxiety, because as we are constantly also, like Yolande already said it, Ari said it, Victoria said it, you know, we all try to think how could we bring the empathy nearer to the species, the ones which they are, you know, like whales and dolphins, which people can relate easier because we see them, they're spectacular because of their size. But then also on the other hand, I think is really great, like also how Victoria Vesna and Martina and the whole team did with the Noise Aquarium, where you have this trick of like tricking us with the voices and sounds from these big creatures to understand also the microorganisms.
Thank you so much. I also have a follow-up question, and I think I start with Ari again. This question, because, you know, actually it would be, I think, impossible not to mention COVID situation we're in, and I've read some articles about how COVID made the sky quieter and the ocean quieter. Can you confirm this, Ari? Did marine underwater environment indeed become quieter since the COVID broke?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And literally earlier this week, we were out doing some research to study this. We recently got a grant from the National Science Foundation to link the changes in the ambient noise conditions in a couple of marine sanctuaries here in Monterey Bay, and also in Stellwagen Bank on the east coast of the US, and then link the stress hormone levels in whales to those changes in sound. And so there are listening stations in both of these areas that measure sound continuously. And so what we're doing is going out and collecting very small samples of the whale's blubber, and we're measuring cortisol, which is the same stress hormone that we have that elevates when we get stressed and it decreases when we're calmer. And we're linking the amount of sound in the environment to levels in these animals. And from analyzing the acoustic data at this point, there definitely has been a decrease overall in the ocean noise because there's less people using recreational boating. There's slightly less commercial shipping traffic depending on where you are. And we're starting to analyze those samples, but what we're very likely to see is a nice decrease in those stress levels in those animals.
Thank you, which leads me to another question, this time to Yolande. Yolande, are you planning to work with Ari on this topic?
Yes, I am planning to work with Ari on this topic. It's right at the early stages, but as you know, we're both in Santa Cruz, so the Monterey Bay is right there. I swim in it most days, so we have the effects of the marine layer of fog that comes in. It's very present in this area. This the redwoods grow because of that. It's not like the Monterey Bay is separate. It's like the influence of the ocean is in this environment that we live in. So with that, when COVID started and everything became extremely quiet here, one of my first questions was, what's it like? There are hydrophones out, static hydrophones out in the bay there. What's it like? What's the difference? How can we find that out? So when I spoke with Ari about this particular project, I thought, this is exciting. And one of the things that I do like, and I don't know how it will pan out, but is really thinking about stress. And we talk about, noise and noise pollution and the stress levels, but we are also going through a period of great stress that is affecting all of us. It's not just we experience individual stresses, but there's also this collective level of stress that is happening. So I'm very curious about what that might be and how to present this work. We'll see where it goes.
So I'm looking forward to it. Victoria, we have another question from the audience though. So yeah, Victoria, go ahead.
Just to respond to Yolande a little bit, a few years ago, well, it's quite a few years now, I was looking into noise pollution influence on mental health. And at UCLA, they did studies that just showed absolute one-to-one, where you could see where neighborhoods where there was a lot of noise, street noise, helicopter, etc. Depression and stress levels were so much more obvious, sleep interruption, all kinds of things. So I think it's a really important, critical thing to address now that the world has quieted down a little bit. We actually can hear the birds. We can look into the ocean where it's quieter and really ask, how is this noise pollution affecting us? Because it's amplified, of course, underwater, but we have the same problem in cities. I mean, Anna, we talked about it, how in cities, we both are we get overwhelmed because it's so much, both sound and visual noise, I should add.
Yeah, right. And this noise in an urban environment is often even unacknowledged. People in general are not aware of how it affects them because they stopped hearing it. I myself realized only after I've moved to the village, only then I realized that actually in the urban environment, there is this background noise all the time, and I'm not hearing it when I'm there. Now I may be more aware of what's happening with me in the city, but before I was completely like, I just got used to it so much. Yes, Yolande, please go ahead.
Yes, so this discussion just makes me think about how important it is to learn how to listen and to be, follow these ideas of say, deep listening from Pauline Oliveros, for example. I mean, she was a great pioneer of that and worth mentioning here. And just the way I think of it is like retraining one's listening capacity so that you can access this kind of sonic intelligence that's innate in us, but has been so suppressed. That it's so rich, it's so wonderful if you can access it and be aware of it. So it's like acting on a level of consciousness that's a sonic level, a sonic consciousness. We're so visually oriented, and yet how can we do that when we're talking about noise and noise pollution? How do we even understand that when we want to see the image, you know. And so actually in these installations like Victoria's one with plankton and with the animations, and with my work with Ari, the last one from A Whale's Back, which uses these very strong imagery, how does that, my idea is, how does that imagery take us into this world of listening? So not keeping the sound in the background, but really draw us into this sonic consciousness, if you like, because I think that's where we need to work. And I think that's what the ocean offers us, this sonic way of thinking and being that is not bounded by walls. It's not objectified to such an extent. It's much more fluid, and you know, this oceanic kind of consciousness as well, I think is important.
Yes, thank you so much for mentioning Paulina Oliveros, especially that her deep listening method evolved out of a feminist workshops she ran in the late 70s. And I really like her book about it, the text she wrote about who she is, like she's a woman, a queer woman, a feminist, and actually how her her social consciousness actually prompted her work in a deep listening, and it meant a lot of things to her at the time. So there is I think an interesting heritage to mention, and I'm wondering whether it is something about women taking care of, you know, the listening practice, because I would like to mention Hildegard Westerkamp as well here, who was a pioneer on sound walks, and Andra McCarthy. There's quite a lot of women in this field now as well, but that would be another entirely different discussion. Robertina wanted to say something as well, and we have a question from the audience, as I already said. Robertina, go ahead.
I would just like to continue also the thought about this deep listening, as I think it's very important. There's two ways how to engage the public always, you know. There's always this possibility to have these amazing visuals and then trick the public to be much more, you know, like open to listen to something else. Or I had like this year possibility to work with one studio which has like 4D sound system, which has like surround speakers. This means that there have been like 48 speakers in the space and 9 subwoofers. So it was for me also amazing to experience that. And also it was different way how you tell the story only through the sonic levels. So I'm really happy Yolande put this out there also to have this kind of sonic presence, as we are all very visual animals, humans, and oceans aren't that, you know. Oceans are much more, all the animals which they're living there, like since they don't have the possibility to see around, as in 200 meters, it starts to be already twilight and then quite dark very soon. It's very needed to have this like 3D sound orientation into the space, which is something completely else that we are used to have in our terrestrial lives, which we are used to have.
Thank you, Robertina. Victoria, go ahead.
I would just like to prompt Yolande to talk about her walking project, because that's really related. And thank you so much for bringing up Pauline Oliveros, because she very much inspired me to move this project and also Alien Stardust to meditations, of course, and totally a textbook example. And also shout out to Linda Weintraub, who is kind of a truly mentor for me, as far as how important it is that as artists, we're activists in the earth we live in and share with all the animals and creatures and the intricate web of life. So anyway, long prompt to Yolande to talk about her cool listening project.
Yeah, we already agreed about Linda Weintraub's books that
yes,
inspiring to a few of us here. Yolande,
two textbooks.
Yeah. But you know, first maybe I ask the question from the audience.
Oh yes,
it's a really interesting question, and Yolande prepares. So you know, we have actually super interesting question are the sounds made by the presence of a diver underwater are potentially stressful for microorganisms like plankton? And Evelina is asking this question. What would you say about divers? Robertina,
That's hard to answer. I mean, because the diving sound is one of the sounds we use, and it is pretty loud. But I don't think it's a. This is layman answer, artist answer. I don't think that it's a destructive sound or frequency, because it's breath and it's rhythmic and it's oxygen that kind of moves. So I think it's really the energy of the diver that should be thought about rather than the sound of the breathing. So if the diver is stressfully moving and breathing and has, you know, equipment that's really loud, most likely. But generally, I find it almost like divers tend to have a really kind of symbiotic relationship with the water. It makes me think of the work of Shar Davis, actually, if anybody's familiar. If not, it's one of the very first VR projects where she actually took the idea of diving, and as you're breathing through the VR spaces, you're like a diver. So,
thank you. Yolande?
Not a scientific answer.
And Sławomir, maybe you can say something about it.
Yes, just a short comment. I think it's probably not stressful, because the level of this sound which diver can produce, the sound from air, bubbling, etc., probably doesn't exceed any natural levels of noise in the ocean. So I wouldn't be afraid that divers using regular equipment can make any stress to marine organisms, and especially plankton. And I would like also to add one more comment to the previous question, because I probably didn't answer the entire question, which was quite tricky, because if I got it well, the question was about whether we can identify individual characteristics of specimens of individual plankton of the same species. And well, probably after long investigation of all characteristics, we would find differences between individuals, but this is not what we are able to do. We study plankton en masse as a group of organisms, and we are by far away from such a possibility to study individual plankton organisms. So this would be an additional comment to first important question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It also says a lot about how we think in terms of individuals rather than
yeah, absolutely.
Right? So it is kind of a framework that informs the very way we look at the world. So it actually reveals some hidden agendas that we as humans.
Yeah, so I hope Krzysztof got the complete answer now. If not, he can contact me, and then we can discuss a little bit more about whether it's possible or doable to study individual plankton organisms.
Yeah, before we go to Yolande finally, I'd like to ask Martina about this question of species and individuals. What do you think? You worked with biologists. Do you think, thinking in terms of individual entities is a kind of a bias, cultural bias, when we look into the wildlife?
Yeah, of course, there are different like subspecies, you say. I don't know, I'm not biologist, but we got one individual scanned, and usually it was one a certain species, kind of, but we never went down to really fully so the biologists, they told me, for instance, with the Domopteris worm, with the blue one in the image, with the legs, with a lot of legs, they told me it might be the Helgolandica Domopteris, but they are not completely sure. So this is always up to the biologists to really, as Sławomir said before, sometimes you have to use the genetic information even, or you have to count like some hair, or really look close into the details. And this is this can be a topic for one paper. But I also wanted to answer to the other question. So if the people sympathize with the plankton, as Victoria said, we wanted more to pick one. So especially in the virtual reality installation, there is always one plankton coming at you, so at random, and it picks you more or less. So fate picks for you one random plankton, and you try to balance the ecosystem, and one plankton represents the balancing act for you. So in a way, it's the people did sympathize with this one plankton that they either had to save or they did kill. And we had, in the exhibition, we often had a lot of visitors who wanted to try again and again because they totally wanted to save it. And we didn't make it particularly easy. So people were really, oh, I want to save this time the plankton, yeah. And also to the sound representation in the VR is then especially like very physical, very bodily, because the noise waves, they shoot out of the body of the person who has the VR goggles on. So this is a very striking visualization of this problem of noise pollution. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So this is how you made people experience plankton,
Yes.
right? According with what Robertina has said on the other occasion about how experiencing means also empathizing and stopping ignoring. Yolande, let's get back to your sound walk.
Yeah, I think all these things are linked. You know, our relationship to an individual is a very human response that we need, even when we see large groups or imagine large groups. We need to know the individuals within them to understand. So that I think that's interesting. The project that Victoria was referring to is based on these headphones. I can put them in front of my virtual. Here they are. So this started in a project in Dundee in Scotland, where I was asked to do a sound walk on their whaling history. And so I researched what species of whales they would bring into Dundee port on the whaling ships, dead at for the factories. And I also at the same time discovered that there was a big jute industry, and this is jute here. In Dundee. So the women worked in the jute factories and run the jute factories, and then the men tended to go on the whaling ships and bring back the whale oil to make the jute, and the jute to make the ropes to go on the whaling ship. So there was this very cyclical, traditional gender role experience. So there's a kind of interweaving, and literally this is a Celtic 16-strand hollow braid that I learned how to remake, like an interweaving of these people from Dundee and the whales and the species of the Arctic, where they went to get these animals. So the sound that I created was from a scientist in the University of Washington who gave me these extraordinary recordings now from the Arctic and told me what species were there. There were bowhead whales, bearded seals, narwhals, and that's what you hear when you put these on the edge of Dundee Harbour and look out at the harbour and imagine the ships coming in while listening to the voices of the then dead, now alive animals. So to use sound to try to create this connection and this kind of interweaving of the cultural lives of both those animals and us that is historically so present. And then that went on to do, I went on to do something similar in the Monterey Bay and in Santa Cruz, and a whole project called Melt Me Into the Ocean, and really trying to extend this feeling of standing on the edge and sort of melting into this ocean substance, if you like. And you know, how can you do that by sound? So there's kind of a sort of a pull towards the ocean when you're there. And so using sounds from the Monterey Bay, from right out where you're walking, you walk out past the waves, out to a lighthouse, while listening to these sounds of starting very shallow at the shoreline and diving deep down into the bay, and you hear many different species of whales, and a noise, a hiss of ocean noise, which is you know, present, like a hiss that comes from rain on the surface or waves on wind on the surface. So and there are engine noise, all sorts of different kinds of sounds in there. And because you're walking and looking, and these headphones are what's called open back, so you can hear what's happening around you. When somebody walks past you, you might hear their conversation, you hear the waves breaking on the shore that you go by. You have this kind of augmented reality, but a sound augmented reality that allows your vision to look around you and be in this place, and yet the sound is telling you you're in these multi-layered environments and you're kind of moving under the water that you're looking at. So those have been taken into all sorts of different places, including, I think what I found very rewarding is these healing workshops with groups of women with severe trauma. And it's the last place I would have actually sort of immediately thought of, although through my work with Pauline Oliveris, it does come naturally to think of those things. But to actually have the opportunity to enter into a very difficult healing space of a group of women was really important. And these sounds and these walks along the ocean did really help them. So.
I mean, it draws from walking meditations, right? Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. The tradition of walking and the actual, you know, physical presence in a space that you have by your movement in it, and that wandering, if you like. It's not like it's not quite like a sound walk where there's a narrative which I'm being told and following that's scripted in that way. It's really like a more open sort of imaginative dream space that you enter, where you can follow your own thoughts, but they're sort of prompted by this soundscape.
So it sounds like a guided walking meditation. And it is amazing that you mentioned this context of a healing processes, because I think it is extremely interesting way to connect to marine environment when this healing process is happening close to the sea. I think naturally, intuitively, we perceive the sound of an ocean as something soothing, something that helps to heal wounds taken in the noisy urban environment. So this is an amazing project from what you described. Thank you so much again, Yolande. And we're coming to the end of our panel, I guess. So to wrap up, I would like to, I think, maybe get back to the topic of a COVID, because it got me thinking, do you think, is COVID our chance as well, our opportunity to reconfigure the way we live. Because Victoria mentioned that the world just became quieter for a while. I think maybe for 2 weeks from my perspective, because in the city where I live quite close to the airport. So I think 2 weeks I was so surprised not to hear the airplanes. And when I went out to my balcony, I had the impression that the sky actually took the deep breath. That was the image that immediately came to mind. So and because there is so much anxiety and so much fear entangled with this whole situation, and the COVID brought about many crises, and we think about the virus as a threat rather than a chance. I would like to shift this discussion a bit, or shift the general mood a bit, and ask you about COVID as our chance, as opportunity. Can you ponder on this a bit? Do you see COVID as our opportunity? Can we learn from it somehow? Can we learn to cooperate with other organisms and empathize?
It may be our last chance. I think, well, I'll just say from my perspective, I find it to, yes, be an opportunity, but it's a very difficult time for many, many people, animals, creatures, just for the whole ecosystem, because it's out of balance, basically. And to use this opportunity where we can create community online, like we're doing right now, through projects that are based on science and working with scientists, and all this time of fake news and invented noise pollution for the mind, to create these spaces where people can understand that we are living on one planet, and that the water that we share, we all share, the air that we breathe, we all breathe together. No matter whether you're left or right wing in your politics, you have to drink water, and you have to breathe air, and you have to eat food. So if we can somehow, yes, opportunity, of course, and are we desperate? Yes. And is everybody stressed about the uncertainty? Yes. But we should not stay idle, is my feeling, because I think this is where the worst situations in the world came about, is when people were either in disbelief or did not do anything. And so if there's ways that we can raise consciousness, and if we're talking about vibrations and frequencies, raise the frequency and vibration of what's being discussed, and what comes into people's mind, and what the young who are inheriting this earth are learning and understanding, I think that's a minimum that we can do as artists and scientists, because this is not a new problem. It's just getting more visible. And the most amazing thing to me is that a virus that's 140 nanometers actually turned our world upside down. That's a huge message. And not to necessarily even compare it to previous pandemics, because it's different. We're actually seeing each other now. We're understanding that we're a whole planet. So yes, it's an opportunity. And it's a huge challenge that's going to take a lot of us coming together as we are now, but repeatedly, not stopping, just continuing through education, through art, through performances, through poetics, however, just, to raise the frequency. Yes, that's
Sławomir?
the opportunity. And
yeah, Victoria, go ahead. Sorry, I just saw Sławomir's hand.
Well, I was thinking of you, so you jumped in right at that moment. That it's an opportunity to connect with people that we are connected to. So when Anna and I met, it was instant. And thank you, Agnieszka and Jadwiga, for connecting us. And we both visualize that we're connecting our mind waves across the ocean and thinking of the Baltic Sea and thinking of the Pacific Ocean and of these creatures. And it was just magical. And to have others participate just amplified this amazingly. So I'm really grateful that we have this opportunity, that we can do this and have these discussions and think of these creatures that are part of us. Every second breath we take is because of the planktons. It's crazy. I didn't know that when I started this project. Why did I not know this? This should be a household knowledge, right? Nobody tells us that. It's the forests. Well, it's more complicated than that.
I didn't know it either, you know. So this is amazing fact. So I think maybe it's a good idea to pass the voice to our plankton guy, to Sławomir, who wanted to comment as well. Sławomir, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to comment and add to Victoria's answer. I think it would be pity if the virus situation is the turning point if in our thinking about the world and understanding where we live. And this would mean we are really poor beings if this tragedy makes us thinking or starts us to to acknowledge all the knowledge, all the history which is behind us. So yeah, it might be a trigger, but if it is the only chance for us to change, it's really a pity thing. So I hope it's not. I hope we will start thinking. I hope that people like Victoria and Yolande and Ari and all scientists and artists who join efforts will be heard first, then the politicians and people who think they are leading us, but they lead us to nowhere. So thank you, Victoria, for this great piece of art, and please continue in showing people through a mixture of art and science where we live and what we should take care, what is our goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just I say, you know, that I can't help, but I see the virus as, you know, the entity we collaborate with rather than, you know, because I know as much as I'm afraid of, you know, getting sick, I think of a virus as something that wants really to kickstart us into the changes that should have been implemented long time ago. Because it's not the virus itself that's so dangerous. It is rather the systemic failures we experience every day, you know, healthcare systems across the world. So
and education.
Exactly. So there is a lot of mess, human-made mess that this virus just exposed. So, you know, let's put the blame where it should be actually put, not on the virus itself, because as Lynn Margolis actually showed us, we're viruses. I mean, all of us, we have some parts of virus information within our bodies. And so it is much more complicated. And I think these are the stories I really love, the stories that Donna Haraway reminded us in her latest book. I prefer staying with trouble, so to speak, rather than, you know, find easy answers. And I so much appreciate to be able to collaborate with you and have this conversation today. And also, I would like to thank to our audience, because I'm not sure if you're aware, but we've been watched far and wide in Montreal, in Ontario, in Cambridge, among other places. And we also got shout outs from the people located in a different institution across the world. So I think this is amazing time to live in. Dangerous, yes, and fearful, yes, but also hopeful. So yes, I don't know if we can say something more about it. Anyway, thank you very much for sharing your insights today. And I hope our paths gonna cross again in the future, in the soon future as well.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Jadwiga, Agnieszka, Sławomir, Robertina,
Thank you.
Yolande. What a great group. This is just the beginning. We're gonna keep talking and hopefully do a meditation together again soon.
Yeah, Tadeo from Montreal said something beautiful about making kin in Cthulhu. So we're all making kin in Cthulhu, I suppose. Okay, so that was a kind of a message that reverberated with the book, with Donna Haraway's book that I mentioned, like Cthulhu, which means the epoch, the age of different organisms collaborating, like mixed origins and hybrids as well, will or hybrids. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
So I'd like also
Bye, everybody.
Okay, I would like also say thank you very much to everyone, and I think that the spaces like ours will be useful for this connection like today. Scientists and artists talks about so serious matters, and I hope, well, someone of you said about the role of education, and I hope that culture institution make new background for education, because I think by art always it's much easier to learn people, because people love everything to make fun.
Yes, and Jadwiga and Agnieszka, thank you so much for making it happen. Without you, we wouldn't be able to talk today. So you're just awesome.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice evening. Have a nice day. I don't know what time is where.
Bye.
Bye.